Welcome to the Schlegel Design Remodel Podcast. I'm Amy Gerard, and I am so excited about today's episode. Joining us today is Leslie Hatfield, a degreed architect at Schlegel. Leslie has been in the architecture arena for over 25 years, and somehow she manages to create brilliant designs on each and every project that she works on. So Leslie, welcome to the Design Remodel Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me today.
Okay, so we're going to dig in, and I'm just so curious to how your brain works and hoping to capture a little bit about that. So can you tell me a little bit about your process when starting on these projects?
Certainly. The first thing out of the gate, we meet with the client. That meeting I call a meet and measure. And we're really just touching the iceberg of what we're going to get started on, walk through their space, and really listening to what they like and don't like about their space. And from that, I'll ask a lot of what I call trigger questions that will make them elaborate, because they'll tend to just walk through a space and say, I don't like this. But trying to really dig deep and figure out why they don't like it and how we can make it better. But at that meeting, I mean, we're getting out lasers and we're really doing the nitty gritty on a really good measure. And that kind of starts the process for us.
So what are some of those trigger questions out of curiosity?
They may just say, I don't like this room. And it's, well, let's figure out why you don't like that room. What is it you need in this space? I feel like a lot of the spaces we're working on might be right off the garage when you come into the home. They have a hard time depicting the things that they like, and really they may not even understand what they need in that space. Do they have young kids? So it's learning about the family. Are all those kids in events? And we got to figure out, is the pet peeve, where do my shoes go? And, how do our coats and bags, and where do those things fit? We have things called command centers where we like to charge things and drop our mail. And so we talk about all of those things and how their life works, because getting everybody through that corral and out the door at the same time can be a nightmare.
I relate so well to all of those things you talked about. Okay, so you take all of those answers to the questions and all your detailed measures, and you come up with what from that?
Well, the first thing we do is we create the as-built plan. So until I see the floor plan in a plan view, bird's eye view is really when things start coming together for me. I may see things while I'm there at that first meeting with the client, but I try not to spill those ideas. I like to keep them all in my head and then kind of really spin them when I get them in plan. So I just see one idea. And then once I get it in plan, I can push and pull and maneuver things and create something totally different that none of us had thought about.
So what leads you to come up with those different ideas? Is it knowing that this is a load-bearing wall and knowing I have to open it up from this wall, or how do you even get to that point that you're able to design a couple different options for one home?
Well, I try to keep those things out of the initial thought process because those can be limiting. So if I try to eliminate all those things and just see voids, then I can start seeing how people could move through the space. And then it's filling it in with what's left. So a lot of times it's like, well, I got to have a kitchen and I got to have this wall of this and I got to have this. It's how do you want to move through the space? And then you can start filling in the corners and the walls and where a table might go. I probably look at it backwards instead of, black and white. It's voids and walk space to me.
And do you always present more than one option?
Always, always, always. Number one, I'll present what I think they asked me to give them and what they are seeing. And then I usually give a plan B, that kind of takes that idea and spins it a little more, maybe pushing some thoughts they really hadn't thought about or even asked me for. And then I always give a C, and some of the designers call it my bam shabam. but it's usually my idea or taking their idea and totally spinning it, flipping it a different way, entering a room from a different way. Let's put the kitchen on this wall and not this wall, but it usually is a totally different idea no one had thought about.
The bam shabam, is that the coin term?
Yep, that's what it usually comes with a price tag too.
The
So
bam shabam is the big option. That's the firework finale option.
yes, so I usually show that last, and I can read people too. Are they willing to see it? And sometimes we'll ask them because it isn't always something that they've asked for, and it may not be in their budget. But
Yeah, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. I speak from personal experience. Okay, so this is probably just everyone knows this, but what tools do you use once you take all those measurements and you create the as-built and you create the new designs? Are you using a specific tool?
well, for me to get the thought process flowing, I use tracing paper and a big fat Sharpie. And that just gets me started. That I can draw fat lines and not something precise, just to get how things may work and move together. And then I'll start fine tuning it. I'll use my trace, I'll get into using a pen, and then we'll push those ideas into CAD. And I've got a couple of girls that work for me in our team, and we get those plans entered in CAD on top of the as-built that we've already started and make it work. Sometimes we need to take it a step further to help the client understand our vision, and we'll put things in 3D. So we do have a couple programs to help do that. And then if we're doing, kitchen where there's a lot of cabinetry, we'll do elevations and things to help them understand what we're trying to depict on heights and elevations of things.
So Leslie, I'm imagining behind you somewhere is this giant pile of papers that you've created with Sharpie pin marks on them. What do you do with all of those when you're done?
I fold them up and put them in a file.
No, they do exist. They're a giant pile somewhere.
There's files of paper. So yeah, I do save all of those because
Is that what you hand off to your team to put into CAD then?
I do.
Okay.
I do. We hand them to them, scan them to them, take pictures of them. It's kind of a language. Once you guys start working together as the team, you kind of start, we've kind of created our own language, so to say. So like I can't imagine handing it to you and you understanding what it means, but handing it off to my team, it's amazing. Over time they're like, oh, I know what she means here, and oh, I get what she's thinking here. And it's kind of unique, but I'm pretty lucky to have the team I've got.
You have your own language is what you're saying.
They would agree.
So you provide designs for all types of projects and houses, from small bathrooms to large kitchens and even outdoor spaces. How do you manage to maximize the space each and every time?
That's a hard question. I think that kind of goes back to how to use the space. I mean, we can go from the smallest bathroom in America to having a huge patio, and it's knowing what's got to get in there and moving and manipulating and turning and spinning all of those items until you get it to fit. And it can be tricky on some smaller projects. I think it's the larger projects you have the benefit of moving things around and a little more freedom to give other ideas. It's those tiny little bathrooms that can be the stumpers, I think.
You're literally looking at inches here and there to maximize every square inch, literally.
Yes, and so sometimes it's hard to meet code. So there's clearances that that aren't just uncomfortable to a client, but it's what code makes me meet too.
That's important too. Yeah, meeting code.
No one likes to hear that, but yes, it is an important part of our job.
Are there design rules that you adhere to when you're planning? I think the best example is probably a kitchen. Like, you never put a stove next to a sink. That's just an example. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But are there things that you have to think of every time? And I'm sure we could have 4 podcasts on all the rules, but Are there any that you just off the top of your head always know of?
Well, I like to go for aesthetic. And so I think of focal points when you enter a room. What do I want to see? What do I want to see on the back wall? What do I want to see in front of that? And I try not to get too stuck on, what goes next to each other, because you'll hear the old rule of making the triangle in the kitchen. And I don't always like to let that be a final first impression or first layout at a project. First, I'll try to do an aesthetic and see what is appealing, and then kind of make sure I keep my clearances, because that's so many people forget about standing space, and where, when things fold down and things move and things open, you got to be able to stand and use the space still. So keeping those clearances, and usually it's pretty daunting. You need that much space, and it's like you're going to stand there and you're going to be turning around and you're going to be opening up your dishwasher and lowering your oven. And yeah, those things take up a lot of space, and those big refrigerators that everybody wants today are monsters.
Yeah, and the dual ovens and then the giant ranges. Yeah, we all like big appliances now.
Yep. Everything's bigger.
Everything's bigger. Okay, so back to these options you create. When you create 3 options, what did you call the bada boom?
Bam shabam.
Bam shabam. I'm writing it down so I don't forget the bam shabam. Okay, so when you present A, B, and bam shabam, do you go in knowing which one they're going to pick, or do they surprise you?
Well, I'll tell you what I tell them. We'll start off the meeting and we'll tell them, we're about to give you a bunch of information today, and we don't expect any of these plans to be the perfect plan. We're going to take each of these plans, the things you like and don't like, and spin it and make it the best plan for them. So no, it's usually a hybrid. So they see off the bat, maybe they can't afford C, but there's some things in it that they really like and want to incorporate into their life. So it's usually taking those ideas and doing one more last spin. So no, I would say it's usually not one of those plans.
Okay, so usually it's actually taking a little piece from sometimes all 3 and creating plan D.
Yes, I will. The perfect plan.
So we got bam shabam, and then plan D, we'll just rename the perfect plan. Okay, have you ever had a project that stumped you? Like, it's not going to work. No matter how hard I try to get it in here, it's not going to work.
Well, I'm not going to say I've ever thrown in the towel, but there are definitely projects that take a lot longer to figure out what I'll call the puzzle. So you're taking the pieces and turning. And then you're also trying to sell the client on a negotiation too. So sometimes they can't have everything they want. So what is it are they willing to live without or in a different way? So do we have to move a wall? Do we just have to get it to that? Or do we have to live without something? So sometimes there's just that negotiation of trying to figure out what's more important.
And then every once in a while you get something that keeps you up at night until you figure it out.
Yes.
That is not a puzzle I could solve, Leslie. That's why you're the brainiac behind the operation, because I would probably throw in the towel. I'd be like, I can't solve it. So we talked about a stumped project. Is there a favorite project you've ever done, something that just stands out?
Well, there's a lot of projects that I really, really love that we pulled off in the past, and they're usually aesthetic, and we get them on magazines and we get them awards for them. But there's a couple projects that are close to my heart. One, which I know you know a lot about it was an outdoor project for a local chef that we did. And it's pretty large project to have under our belt, but it was an outdoor living space with a large rustic covered roof, and it was a pool project and an outdoor kitchen, and there was just a lot of moving parts to it, and that one we won a national award for. So I'm pretty proud of that.
I'm looking at the picture as you speak, because yes, it's that fabulous that we have pictures on the walls here in the office. And For those of you who are listening that would like to see the picture, I'll go ahead and put it on the blog alongside the podcast so you can see it. And are there any other ones? I agree. That one and you go simultaneous in my brain. It's just such an amazing project.
There's just a lot of kitchens and a lot of pretty backgrounds and additions that come to mind. They're all beautiful, trying to change their lives. People come back and they remember the process and how they felt and how it makes them feel when they're done. And, it feels good to be a part of that. And I think probably that's what drives me to keep doing what I do. I love my job.
Yeah, that's got to feel pretty amazing to know that you changed how they live every day in their home. That's gonna be a pretty good, cool feeling. Like I did that. I helped get them to where they are today.
And it's not always that big, impressive project too. Like we talked at the beginning, it can be trying to figure out how to get everybody out that garage door and into their car. Cause that can be life-changing, and it's like getting the kids to the point where they're able to take off their seatbelts. It's a milestone and
It's a big milestone. Okay, I'm curious. Does your job follow you everywhere? Do you go to a friend's house that maybe you haven't been to before and you're sitting having dinner or drinks and all you can think about is, man, if they took that wall out, or man, if they moved that appliance, this would flow so much better for them?
No, not until they ask me. For me, it does follow me, but I don't think I'm critiquing. I think I'm looking for things that work and things that I like, and colors and feelings and lights and things that I see that I like, and just try to keep that in my kit of parts. I don't think I go around critiquing and saying what's bad or what's missing or what would be different, but it's more about identifying things that are working so I can remember to try to do that somewhere else.
Yeah. Always planning, trying to use what you see.
Flipping pictures, saving things I see. So yeah, we got to do that somewhere. It's keeping that in mind and waiting for that perfect opportunity.
Those are the questions I had. I feel like there's so much more we could dig into, and definitely maybe we do a whole other podcast on construction documents. And now you've taken the design and get it through the next hurdle on to the next piece for actually getting the project done. But for today, I'll leave it at those questions. But thank you for sharing. And I just think this is such an interesting piece to remodeling, is actually figuring out that design.
Well, thanks for having me, Amy. It was fun to talk about, and I would love to come back.